It is time to sack the asylum-seeker-loving immigration judges. Our judiciary is infested with a cabal of political activists in wigs who seem to do their best to keep total wrong-uns in Britain so that us plebs have to live amongst them. Let's look at some bonkers cases. Judge Fiona Beach, an immigration judge who was formerly a director of Asylum Aid and represented migrants pro bono on behalf of the Bail for Immigration detainees. She let a knife-wielding, drug-dealing sex criminal stay because she said that the evidence showed he was not a, quote, sufficiently serious threat. Judge Leonie Hurst allowed an Albanian burglar with 50 convictions to remain in Britain because she said that his crimes were not very extreme and wouldn't cause deep public revulsion. I mean, she was wrong about that, wasn't she? She also allowed a Guinean asylum seeker who was guilty of knife and drug offences to stay because he was socially and culturally integrated. She was also involved in a 2015 litigation that ended fast-track decisions while migrants were held in removal centres. Hey, look, shock horror. It turns out that she served as a director at the now-closed Refugee Legal Centre while working as a barrister in the mid-2000s. Let's whiz ourselves on now to Judge Rebecca Chapman. She's apparently a deputy judge in the Upper Tribunal Immigration and Asylum Chamber. She also worked for the charity Refugee Legal Support. Well, an Iranian asylum seeker has been allowed to have his deportation case reheard after claiming, get this, he had so many Facebook friends that he was at risk of persecution if he was deported. Thank you very much, Your Honour. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick is actually calling this stuff out.
Judges who blur the line between adjudication and activism can have no place in our justice system. Which is why we won't just tinker with a broken system and reform immigration tribunals. We will abolish them, once and for all.
One of the people that he name-checks is this guy.
For his appointment, Judge Symes volunteered for bail for immigration detainees. Even after his appointment, he takes public positions on social media on illegal migration proposals. And he even advertises his judicial office to drum up business for his immigration advisory services.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a look at that charity group earlier, and it is actually crystal clear. Now, get this is a quote. "We dream of a world free of immigration detention, where people are not deprived of their liberty or deported from their home. We aim to end immigration detention in the UK." It's a judge. Here's Judge Canavan. She refused to deport a Jamaican convicted rapist and crack cocaine dealer, accepting that they'd face persecution or indeed hardship if deported. She was previously a refugee charity caseworker and volunteered on cases, you guessed it, preventing deportation. Just to round us off, Robert Jenrick's uncovered another one, Judge Heaven.
Judge Heaven. She spent 5 years before she became a judge volunteering for bail for immigration detainees. And even after becoming a judge, she took to social media to celebrate the defeat of the government's Rwanda plan. These people should have no place in our justice system.
Yep. The days of judges being beyond reproach is over. The establishment hate it. Just look at Emily Maitlis's barely concealed fury that Robert Jenrick dared to call this stuff out.
If you had an anti-immigration judge, can I just ask, if you had an anti-immigration judge,
can you justify,
would that be an activist judge?
Who on social media has given their views on immigration, or who is the trustee of a pro-borders charity? No, of course not. I wouldn't do that.
So when Lib Dems call it a Trumpian purge, what's your response to that?
I'm defending the judiciary. I'm defending the judiciary.
OK. They hate it because they know it's game over. It's over, OK? The British public are not going to bow down in deference anymore. If they don't like it, they can leave the profession and go and work for refugee charities, like Baroness Brenda Hale, the former president of the Supreme Court. She heard many cases involving refugees and asylum seekers. After retiring, she became a commissioner for the Commission of the Integration of Refugees. Well, I'm sorry, but GB News is here now, and we're not too scared to call this stuff out. I find it very hard to believe that this procession of pro-refugee asylum seeker lovers managed to leave their personal views at the door when they walked into the courtroom. Let's get the views of my panel. We, of course, have Reform Councillor Jamie McKeever, The Telegraph's Poppy Coburn and journalist Jonathan Lis. Jamie, I'll start with you on this. I mean, game's up, isn't it, now, for these judges?
Yeah,
They've been rumbled.
They have, and I think the public actually could see this was happening. I think the British people could see this happening, some absurd decisions that have come out of our judiciary. And, you know, I would take it down even to at a lower court level. If you just look recently at the sentencing of 3 men for public disorder in Epping, who have got a tougher sentence than the individual that sexually assaulted a 14-year-old schoolgirl. I think we are seeing this across the judiciary. And I think it is wrong, but I think the British people have seen right through it. And I think Robert Jenrick is right to call it out, but it's, again, the same question with every Conservative politician. Why didn't they deal with it when they had the opportunity?
Go on.
You know what? I'm going to follow on from that line, because as much as I think these judges are utterly contemptible, I mean, one of the charities that you name there, Patrick, Bail for Immigration Detainees, it is nuts. It's an open borders advocacy foundation. These people and these judges, the decisions they have made have directly led to, in some cases, losses of life. OK, so I really cannot stress enough how much I think what they do is contemptible. But how do you actually ensure that we have a sensible immigration system? Judges don't write laws. Parliament does. Politicians do. Robert Jenrick was immigration minister at one point. If you want to get a full overhaul of the immigration system where these cases don't even get to appeal in the first place, change the law through Parliament, then we can get to
The only thing I would say, on that, before I come to Jonathan on this, the only thing I would say on that is that some of their interpretations of the law have been so bonkers that it can only have come...
The law is quite badly written.
From open border fanatics. But even things like when you look at a balding, grey-haired, 6'5" Sudanese man and you just decide that he's probably 16. I think you have to be an open border refugee fanatic.
But let's be harsher. I don't trust these people at all. Let's say, sorry, you don't get to do judicial review on immigration decisions anymore. Sorry, you've abused the power too much. You don't have it anymore. That's something that the government could actually do.
Jonathan, they've been rumbled, haven't they? The game's up. They've had a good run, these judges, but frankly, it's a new era now, and we need to just accept that they're riddled with pro-refugee bias.
No, funnily enough, I don't think that, Patrick. I think that if you want to go down the route of the United States, where the judiciary becomes a viciously partisan theatre, where competing presidents decide to stack the court, the Supreme Court and every court down in their political favour, ending up with a country like the United States, which is basically ungovernable and completely riven, then great, go ahead with Jenrick's plan. Funnily enough, I actually agree with something that Poppy said, which is that judges do not write laws. And we have laws, and judges interpret them. Now, you may disagree with judges' interpretations, and I frequently do as well, but you have to depend on the fact that people may have their own views, but they are also professionals and they can exercise judgment. I don't believe that. Well, I think that's a conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theory. How can you have someone who literally works, or has worked anyway, for a charity whose stated aim is to end any detention for illegal migrants or refugees or whatever, which is basically an open border fanatic thing? How can you possibly say...
It's not open borders, Patrick. No one's saying that we need to abolish Britain's borders. No one is saying that.
Bail for immigration detainees is saying that.
No one's saying that every single person in the country should be allowed in without any
problem. They really are. They are an open border.
Well, I've never seen anyone say that there should be... that anyone can... Well, so the United Kingdom clearly has a capacity issue eventually. I've never... If there is someone who says that that 8 billion people can come and live in the UK, I'd be very interested to hear it.
Aren't they kind of saying that?
Yes, they are.
Well, I would disagree with that. I've never heard anyone say that.
Just a moment. I have heard people say this before. I've written about it extensively, looking into these immigration charities. I think it shocks a lot of people who are fair-minded liberals about how extreme some of these groups really are. I agree that they are not representative of all liberal opinion on this subject, but there are people who are total hardliners. They think there should be absolutely no borders of violence. violence. That's just the concept, borders of violence entirely. So no immigration detention, which means effectively you can't stop anyone from coming in, no stopping of any boats, no deportation flights, they'll block every single one. There are people who do believe in open borders in this country.
Also, most people would, by the way, Jonathan, probably swap the government of the United States of America with this government any day of the week and actually have controlled borders. And secondly,
Trump is very unpopular in this
this is actually about our very broken constitution, albeit in its uncodified form, because what Tony Blair did when he destroyed our unwritten constitution was when he took the judiciary away from Parliament, and it's lost that accountability. They've been able to get away with so much for many, many years because that Parliament isn't able to hold them accountable with so many of these awful things. And if you was to have the judiciary back where it should be, in the House of Lords, with that ability to hold people to account, you would be able to stop a lot of this, but they've been able to get away with it on their own for far too long.
Well, I mean, the law lords are always separate from the House of Lords in general. I mean, you kind of mainly just change the venue where they meet.
It should be sovereign, and we should always...
I think you should have a separation of powers. That was important.
It's not happening.
Just nice, because I think, you know, if the way around, if people are getting so worked up about the kind of language that Robert Jenrick used there, and by the way, we're also touching on things he said about Birmingham, which again he was just right about earlier on. You know, if they were so, they shouldn't have let it get to this stage, should they? A procession of completely inexplicable rulings on immigration cases that only make sense if you look at it from the standpoint of the fact that maybe this judge is of the view that basically all refugees should stay in Britain. They didn't have to let it get to this stage, did they?
And it's been literally happening my entire lifetime, Patrick. Don't want to call myself out too much here, but a couple of years ago, I was looking through historic cases of asylum appeals. There was one woman who seemed to be going through the system for literally half the time I'd been alive, just going backwards and backwards and forwards with these legal charities. And eventually she got a judge who was sympathetic to these views, that despite not having a valid claim to remain in the UK, really none at all, at that point she'd been here for so long that the judge went, oh, well, you may as well just stay. You know, you've been here for so long, appealing our decision and refusing to leave, you may as well just stay in Britain. This is the sort of thing that degrades trust in institutions like this. And I do understand your argument, by the way. I actually don't want a politicised system. What I would say is that you should have been calling out the politicisation of the system sooner, before it became a reaction on the part of the right. The right are not just saying this from nowhere. There have been cases that have really, really aggregated the public, and understandably so. So that lack of trust starts in one direction. I'm not sure it's the direction...
Poppy, I think it's a fallacy to suggest that only the right wing has problems with the judicial structure in the United Kingdom. There are a lot of lefties, I can assure you, who also have extreme fundamental problems with the way that the policing works in this country, the way the courts work.
So you agree we need reform?
Completely, we need reform, and I think that there is huge overreach in government power on probably different issues from the ones that you think the government overreaches on. But absolutely, the court system needs reform. And Robert Jenrick, who oversaw, along with his party, more than £1 billion of cuts in the judicial system, and the swinging austerity, which has left the longest backlog in the courts that we've ever seen, is not the person to be talking about this.
Well, we're going to have to whiz it on. A spokesperson for the judiciary has told us, in each case, judges make decisions based on the evidence and arguments presented and apply the law as it stands. So that is their statement. And look, obviously, every single judge that I have mentioned there will no doubt categorically say that they are entirely independently minded, they're just doing the job, and that they have never brought political bias into any courtroom. So that's good.